The following Channel 5 special is presented in association with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts.
It's magnificent, really.
Great. Exciting.
Marvelous reputation.
It's awesome.
You find anything you want.
An escape.
The best.
I enjoy it because it's very spontaneous.
What are these people talking about?
I don't think it's Fenway Park.
I know it's not the weather.
Perhaps it's my administration.
I don't think so.
Tonight, live from Copley Square, everyone is talking about the Boston Public Library. It speaks volumes. A Channel 5 special with your hosts, Chet Curtis and Natalie Jacobson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chet Curtis.
And I'm Natalie Jacobson, and we're here tonight to celebrate one of New England's most fascinating treasures. If you have never been to the Boston Public Library, you're in for a treat tonight. We're standing here in Bates Hall, the main reading room in the McKim building. The artwork, the sculpture, the architecture are just gorgeous. Not to mention, of course, the world-class collection of rare books, historical items, dolls, maps, music, you name it. There's truly something here for everybody.
That's right, Natalie. Tonight we will see in the next 90 minutes a performance of Shakespeare, some magic, life-size puppets. We'll have some politics and humor for you. All examples of the tremendous variety the library offers. Among our guests are some of our most renowned authors, Pulitzer Prize winners David McCulloch and John Updike, plus Robert Parker, humorist Art Bookwall, and many, many more.
What a fascinating group we've got for you. And you know, some people use this library for many purposes. How about just settling a bet? How about this one? Babe Ruth's average, the first year.
I have no idea.
I think we might find that answer for you here.
But I am concerned that the curse of the Bambino is affecting the Red Sox on the current road trip.
That could be.
And I bet you don't know which convicted, executed murderers have death masks that are here in the library.
Well, we're going to find that out tonight, too.
You'll find out a little later in the program. And now let's say hello to Frank Avrush, who's on the elegant marble staircase right below us. Frank?
Yes, Chet, I'm here with Susan Warnick, and this is, I can't tell you what a thrill it is for me to be here. This is the entrance on the old wing of the Boston Public Library with this elegant marble staircase that everyone is greeted when they come in the door. And this definitely is one of the national treasures of New England, along with the Boston Symphony or the Museum of Fine Arts. Such a special building. It's historic, and it is one of the things that makes Boston such a special place. Don't you agree, Susan?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm happy to be standing here along with one of New England's treasures.
Oh, well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Tonight we're doing something a little different. I guess you could call it a telethon of sorts. We have volunteers from the Boston Public Library and Blue Cross Blue Shield who are giving their time tonight to ask you, New England, to help out. The Boston Public Library is in the midst of a restoration campaign, a renovation campaign to bring it back to its original glory, and what a glorious edifice this is. So will you please stand up and be counted, New England? We need your help now. 375-6900.
Keep those phones ringing. We'll be back to give you updates throughout the night, of course. Chet, Nat?
Okay, those of you who are Bostonians, have lived here over the last 5 or 6 years, know there was a bit of excitement created in the greater Boston area as Spencer for Hire with Robert Urich was filmed right here in our city. Meet the author of the Spencer series, Robert Parker. Great to have you.
Glad to be here.
Who is, by the way, bred and born here in the great Massachusetts.
That's right. Born in Springfield, brought up in New Bedford, live in Cambridge.
Catch us up with you now. You're filming in Canada?
We're filming a couple of movies based on Spencer for Hire with Urich and Avery Brooks and a wonderful new young actor named Daniel Parker, by an odd coincidence. And he will be around on the screen probably July 22nd on cable.
Now, you have spent more than a little time in this library, and I know this is a place that's close to your heart.
Well, I have been here off and on since before they added the addition. I started here, I think. First thing I can remember was doing a research paper on John Dos Passos when I was a freshman in college, and that was a while. All
right, now listen, we're going to offer some copies, 5 copies as a matter of fact, of Mr. Parker's latest book, Paper Doll. It'll be autographed for the next 5 people who call with $100 in pledge, a $100 pledge or more. Now, this book is not even in the bookstores yet, but you can get yourself a copy for a pledge of $100. Now, let's take a tour of the library so you can see how beautiful this building is and find out about all of the services that are available here, all of them for free.
Thanks, Bob. The Boston Public Library is just what you would expect, and more than meets the eye.
You can walk in here on any given day, and it's sort of like TJ Maxx. It's never the same 2 days in a row. There are over 5,000 events a year occur at the Boston Public Library.
There is so much to say about the library. Public Relations Officer Art Dunphy is never at a loss for words.
There's unbelievable art, architecture, statues, paintings in this library that really make it a world-class museum.
From the detail work on the McKim Building's facade to the soon-to-be-restored Sargent Gallery, from the Abbey Room to Bates Hall, high art adorns this palace for the people.
In addition to that, it's also a very practical building where people walking on off the street will find resources and answers to the questions that they have.
I'm from East Boston, and I'm here because I have a school project on the Space Shuttle Challenger.
Go to the microfiche room, where nearly 300 years of local newspaper stories are available for viewing and copying. Librarian Henry Scannell helps folks find what they need.
Well, we have a lot of people coming in doing genealogy and business and high school research. But we also have people come in and look up old sports stories to settle bar bets. And they'll come in to find the lottery numbers, see if the ticket in their pocket is worth anything.
And some come to find what was lost and can never be replaced.
We came because my husband's family died. We're looking for back history in 1974 on the fire. We're going to bring it home, put it in a scrapbook so our children and Ralph's sister's children can read about what happened to their grandparents and their younger uncles.
I wanted to look up the National Energy Policy Act of 1992.
I'm actually researching a project regarding abortion in Poland, Romania, and Hungary.
Go to the Government Documents Room. The library is a depository for federal, state, and United Nations documents. Many business people use this room, researching government regulations. Others come looking for federal job listings. At tax time, it's especially busy. Gail Fithian is here to assist.
We get a lot of people who want legal information, people going through divorces or people filing for personal bankruptcy. That was a big one the last couple of years.
Not all resources of the library are targeted for problem solving. Many are for pure enjoyment.
At any given time in the Boston Public Library, you're likely to have 5 or 6 different exhibits going on in photography and painting.
On permanent display are the marionettes and the rare book collection. This is home to over 1 million historical works, a 14th century Bible, Shakespeare's works, and the personal library of President John Adams, a man of strong opinions, judging by his doodles. 100,000 musical scores and 18,000 films are available at the library. In the print department are over 500,000 photos. They document how he lived, worked, played, and sometimes died. Sinclair Hitchings is keeper of the prints.
Several people in the last year have come in and said to us that they had relatives, uncles or others who were gangsters in Boston, and just because of family sentiment, they wanted to have pictures of them. And did we possibly have photos of them? Well, it turned out that we did, because these people got into the news.
If a family never made the headlines, the Social Science Department in Bates Hall may still be able to help with the genealogy search. Mary Frances O'Brien is curator.
What they start with is their own family, and they talk to all the family members they can possibly hunt up, find all the certificates at home they can possibly find, and then they can come in here and we can help them go from that known material to the unknown material.
I work for a patent and trademark law firm on my Northeastern co-op, and I'm here basically to get patents for the attorneys.
Patents are found in the science department. Nearly 10 million patents for inventions now used every day. This is also where medical information is found.
I figured I'd come by and check it out, and because I'm going to get radiation for cancer that I was just diagnosed with, I figured, hey, I might as well do a little research and, gain more knowledge about it.
A place to do research and gain knowledge, just what you'd expect a library to be. The Boston Public Library is more than meets the eye. Open to all, free to all.
And volunteers from the Boston Public Library and Blue Cross Blue Shield are manning the phones waiting for your call to stand up and be counted, New England, so I hope you'll give us a call. I'm here with Dr. Jill Kerr Conway, who's author of a lot of books. The last one is written by herself, which is about women's authors. Is that correct?
It's an anthology of autobiographical writing by American women. It spans the period from the 19th century to the present.
Yeah. Did you know that the Boston Public Library has one of the largest collections of women's literature in the country?
Indeed, I do. It's an absolutely astonishing collection. Started by the Higginson family, Thomas Wentworth Higginson, in 1896, added to since, very strong in the 19th century, which is a particular interest of mine.
Can I ask you something, Doctor? When you were young and growing up in Australia, did you use the library as a child?
I lived on a place so remote that it was impossible to get to a library, but there was a lending library in a city 500 miles away which would ship books to us. We got 12 a month. It was my lifeline.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being here on this very special night, Dr. Jill Conway. Now, let's see what Susan's up to in a very special place in Bates Hall.
I really think, Frank, that I have the best job of this whole night because I get to tell you all about some of the great secrets in this library, and here's the first one. Take a look at this. There's this big empty space up there. Can you get a great shot of that? It is a big empty panel on the wall above my head. The famous architect of this building, Charles Follen McKim, commissioned a painting from James Whistler, yes, of Whistler's mother, to go there, but Whistler died before it was finished, and McKim felt it would have been irreplaceable, and so the panel has remained empty all this time. Nothing to go there. Kind of an interesting little story, fascinating story. And we've got a lot of fascinating stories from you. We're calling them library moments. And here's the first one tonight, a special library moment from Art Buchwald.
Hi, I'm Art Buchwald. And this may come as a surprise to you, but I was a very unhappy kid. And the only way I can solve my unhappiness was to go to libraries. I stayed in a library from Monday to Thursday every week, reading books, escaping to the moon, going to Africa, doing wonderful things. So if you're an unhappy kid, may I suggest that you also go to a library?
Art Buchwald makes a very good point. My mom used to say to me, if you can read, you will never be lonely. You can travel the world and meet many friends. Meet this friend, John Updike, Pulitzer Prize winner. He has written novels, essays, currently has a book of poems out. We're delighted that you joined us tonight.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
And I understand, John, that you have used this library to research information that you couldn't find elsewhere, true?
More than once. I lived in Boston for a while, and my book reviews became very erudite. For example, I was reviewing a book by a writer called Italo Calvino, and I didn't like the graphic elements, so I was able over here to find the Italian edition and compare them. That's something you can't get in your ordinary little small city library.
Extraordinary what you can find here. And we, too, would like to offer this on behalf of John Updike, Memories of the Ford Administration. 3 signed copies by the author, Mr. Updike, for the first 3 people who call in with a $100 pledge or more to help the library. Thank you very much. A pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for being here. Karen Holmes is out at Codman Square. There are 25 branches of the Boston Public Library. Karen's at one of them in Codman Square.
Yes, we are, Nat. We are here. We're having a great time. We've got a great bunch of kids here that are enjoying all the activities that are here at the Codman Square branch. They are free, of course. And right now we're listening to a performance of The Rose, the Roxbury Outreach Shakespeare Experience. Let's listen in.
But as we all know, he's dead as a doornail.
Did you all get that?
How many did you get?
They didn't get it. Let's try it again. Double speed.
Okay.
So Shakespeare invented about 1,700 new words like leapfrog,
assassination, suspicious, eventful,
weird,
critical dwindle,
misplaced, monumental, hurried,
countless, impartial, puking, obscene,
lonely. Some of these words you might recognize. Some of these words you might use. He had a way with words and expressions.
high and mighty, off with his head,
eaten out of house and home.
White as the driven snow.
Foregone conclusion. Played fast and loose. Seen better days.
Foul blade. Done me wrong. Sent him packing. Good riddance. Well, it's all one to me because
when all is said and done,
you're quoting Shakespeare.
And as we all know, he's
dead as a doornail. So how many words did Shakespeare invent? I got this side. Give me some words that Shakespeare invented. Words or phrases. Anyone? Puking.
Do you remember
what
any
else?
of them?
Leapfrog.
Assassination.
Dead as a doornail.
Hurried. Puking.
Come on.
Monumental.
Now, they say he invented 1700, but they think he might have invented more.
That just sounds great. With
Monumental.
me is Decima Francis.
In
She is the
1606,
founder and
when
artistic
Shakespeare-
director of the Roxbury Outreach Shakespeare Experience. I don't know if you knew, Decima, that Shakespeare's folios, a complete works worth $4 million, are at the Boston Public Library.
Well, no, I didn't know that, but it's something I wouldn't mind in my library.
The kids seem just so enthusiastic about the performance here. How do you go into the schools and teach kids and get them interested in Shakespeare?
Well, we take the language and we make it accessible by referring it to rap and music because of the iambic pentameter, which is based on music and beats and cadences and on the meter, so it's poetry. I think if Shakespeare was alive today, he would be very interested and fascinated by rap and poetry in general.
Now, I remember reading Julius Shakespeare, Julius Caesar, and Romeo and Juliet in school, and I just couldn't catch on to it. But these kids really just seem so excited.
Well, I think Shakespeare is relevant to the teenage today, and the society we live in is very much like the Elizabethan theatre. I mean, Elizabethan days, so we have Elizabeth I, we have Elizabeth II, we have the same problems.
All right. That's great. Decima Francis, trained at the Royal National Theatre in London. Let's go back to Chet.
All right, Karen, thank you very much. With me is Jack Beatty. He writes for the Atlantic Monthly, and he is the author of The Rascal King, The Life and Times of James Michael Curley. Fabulous book. I was just telling the author I enjoyed it immensely.
I really appreciate that.
Let me ask you, Natalie threw a question to me when we opened the broadcast at 7:30. Do you know Babe Ruth's rookie year batting average?
I don't.
No, I didn't either. They say you can find out anything here. What is it about Boston that produces characters like James Michael Curley?
I don't know. Perhaps it's the weather.
Especially this winter.
Constant adversity perhaps does something to the human grain. I don't know. But it certainly has had a number of piquant characters like Curly.
Indeed. I know that you have availed yourself of the treasures within this building many times.
Yes. I'd have been lost without the library. I mean, it is just an invaluable resource to anybody who does any sort of writing in the city.
We had hoped to have with us tonight Doris Kearns Goodwin, the author of The Fitzgeralds and the Kennedys, and as you just noted, John Fitzgerald.
John Fitzgerald worked here. He worked in the stacks. That was his first job after being a paperboy in the early in the 1890s. Yeah.
That's unbelievable. All right, Jack is going to has graciously autographed some copies of his book, and he's going to offer them 5 copies for. Autographed by Jack Beatty, the author, for the people who call in with a pledge of $100 or more. You can get yourself an autographed copy of The Rascal King. Jack, thank you very much for coming. I hope we have another book coming out of you before too long.
Before too long.
Wonderful. Now, let's watch as Mike Barnacle reviews the careers of these well-loved Boston politicians.
The legend of James Michael Curley, often outrageous, always outsized. For 50 years, he dominated political life in this city.
There was good, there was bad, there was ugly about Curley, and everything was in the richest dimension. He was a man of parts. I mean, the charity, the villainy, the shameless electioneering. On the other hand, the genuine idealism and feeling for the poor, the pious man, the profane man, the man who could quote Shakespeare, the man who was good with his fists. I mean, it goes on and on.
Curley came of age at the end of the last century. Poor, Irish, and with few prospects, he saw politics as his way out of second-class citizenship in a city still dominated by Protestant Yankees. The blood sport of politics was Curley's meat and drink. He made his way up from the ward to Washington as a congressman in 1911. But it wasn't until he became mayor of Boston 3 years later that he found his true calling. Curley went on to become governor, but after his term in the mid-1930s, he became a somewhat pathetic figure. At one point, he lost 5 elections in a row. His first wife had died, as had 7 of his 9 children. Then there was the crowning humiliation, a jail term for mail fraud in 1947.
He lives a politician but dies a celebrity, and with all sins forgiven.
When James Michael Curley passed away in 1958, the city stopped dead in its tracks. 100,000 people came to his wake at the State House. 1 million more lined the streets to see his funeral cortege.
You don't get that kind of response from people unless you've entered way down deep into their affections, beyond anything having to do with politics.
So mark your ballots for Jim, for him. Just mark your ballots for Jim.
The man whom Curly had replaced in Boston's affections was another Irish politician, Mayor John Fitzgerald, known as Honey Fitz. Though Curly may have eclipsed Fitzgerald, it was Honey Fitz's daughter Rose who became the driving force behind America's most powerful political family.
Rose absolutely adored public life. She would be able to throw the first ball out at a ball game. She would go with her father to the slums. She would go with him on trips. She absorbed all the pleasures of public life. And when she had her own children in turn, Rose, having loved it so much as a child herself, wanted her children to love public service. She made them, she told me, love politics. She said people used to give credit later to her husband, Joe, for having groomed them for political careers. But when they were young kids, it was Rose, without a question, who made politics a part of their everyday life and made them feel somehow that this family, who had been given so much, had an obligation to return that benefit to the community. But even more than that, that politics was fun.
And the political lessons that Rose taught were rooted in that unique style that is Boston politics.
The part of Boston politics that was based on the old ward boss system, that meant favors to the constituents, that meant carrying coal to a person whose heat was out, going to the wakes, going to the house of somebody who was sick, that was part of Honey Fitz's legacy that was passed on to Jack, passed on to the next generations. And the Kennedys have always been incredibly good with constituent service. There's no question that if Honey Fitz had ever been alive when Jack Kennedy was inaugurated president, it would have been the proudest moment in his life to think that John Fitzgerald Kennedy, his namesake, had become president of the United States.
I'm David McCullough, and I'm a writer, and I get a great kick in my travels in telling people, emphasizing that Boston has one of the greatest libraries in the country, which means one of the great libraries in the world. And it's another reason we can be very proud of Boston, proud of Massachusetts. I have done the research for several of my books at the Boston Public Library, and I expect to continue doing research for my books at the Boston Public Library.
And David McCullough has been so generous. He's offering 10 autographed copies of his new book, Truman, autographed right there, David McCullough. It's a very valuable item. 10 of these to the first 10 people who contribute $100 or more to tonight's Boston Public Library Telethon. So that is really a wonderful tribute. Remember, 10 of these, and we'll let you know later in the week if you're one of the first 10 to donate $100 or more. So get those phones ringing right now, 375-6900. With me is Professor Gates, who is head of the Afro-American Studies program, and you use the library a lot, don't you, here? It came in very handy just recently doing some research for one of your people, right?
Yes, it did. I found a book about 15 years ago that I was convinced was the first novel published by a person of African descent in this country. And to prove it, the book was published in Boston in 1959, and to prove it, we had to find this woman in the 1860 Boston census. Well, all the censuses have been microfilmed, and I was at Yale University at the time, and the census the microfilm did not include that particular neighborhood on the census. And so I sent a research assistant to this library to look at the original manuscript, and the page had somehow been missed by the photographer, and she unfurled the page, and there was Harriet Wilson, the author of our name.
And you found it right here. Well, thank you, Professor Gates, very much. There are a lot of famous people, as a matter of fact, who come and use the public library, and as a matter of fact, we're going to find out what some of their favorite books are right now.
My favorite book is Gone with the Wind.
My favorite book is Pirates by the Sea.
A Room with a View.
Michael Jackson's Moonwalker.
Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton.
One of my favorite books is Exodus.
Catcher in the Rye.
Good question.
My favorite book is The Scottish Chiefs.
Home improvement books.
Ellen G. White. The name is The Great Controversy.
I remember those Nancy Drew stories like couldn't believe it. Loved it.
The Browder File.
The Unbearable Lightness of Being.
Peter Rabbit.
My favorite book is Catcher in the Rye because I identify with Holden Caulfield, the hero of that book. He and I worked opposite sides of the streets in New York City.
My favorite book is the next one I'm going to write.
He's not here, is he? No.
Hi, I'm Charles Lockwood-Era from WBCN Radio in Boston. You know, my morning show is absolutely insane. I've got people calling in, asking all kinds of questions. We have pop quizzes, we have Trivial Pursuit, we have all kinds of stuff, and even a lot of factual, serious information comes out of our airwaves on WBCN. And one of the things that I always can depend on is the Boston Public Library. Man, I call them up, and they have all the answers. And when people say, "What's your source for that dumb answer?" I say, "Hey, man, it's the Boston Public Library." Now that's a source.
Say hello to Justin Kaplan and Ann Bernays, a husband and wife, a team, if you will. They told me they've been married some 38 years, living here in Massachusetts.
Yeah, indeed, 38 years.
And were you writing when you knew each other, when you first met?
About to write. We were both in book publishing in New York. And then we decided to turn into honest people.
Well, I'll tell you, how about this for a feat? Hold this book up here. Surely anyone who's familiar with a dictionary or has done any writing, whatever, knows Bartlett's familiar quotations. This book is edited about once every 10 years, and Justin Kaplan says...
it's about 5 pounds, I'd say.
How long did it take you to edit this?
I spent 2 years on this book. I don't think I've ever had so much fun working in my entire life.
Really?
And
Would you do it again?
No. Now I have to go back to you.
Not that much fun. Now, how about when you couple some of these quotations?
I had a lot of fun putting strange quotations together. For example, on one page you'll find Henry Thoreau saying, "Beware of all enterprises that require new clothes." And then a few pages later on you'll find Mark Twain saying, "Clothes make the man. Naked people have little or no influence in society." And you put these two notions together and you think, well, there's something going on in this book.
There certainly is. If you're ever bored, pick this up. You'll be entertained tremendously. And Ann Bernays has just written a new novel.
By the way, well, this is a kind of middle-aged novel by now. It's called Professor Romeo, right here.
All right, and as with the other wonderful authors who've been kind enough to come here, each of these books is available to the next 5 people who call in with $100 or more, signed by the authors, Bartlett's famous book of quotations and Ann Bernays' Professor Romeo. So do give a call and not only get yourself a terrific book signed by the author here, but also help out this extraordinary institution. If you could walk through here, you'd understand why we're trying to collect some money. Susan Warnick?
Chet and Nat, I've got some excellent reasons right now why you should get to the phone this minute and start calling in. A lot of people don't know there are millions, yes, I said millions of items in this library that the public doesn't even know about because they haven't been cataloged. The library does not have the money to catalog the items. We're going to tell you about some of those items now, and we're going to show them to you. And to help me do that is Catherine Dibble, who is the Supervisor of Research Library Services. There's so many things here. Catherine, let's start with these postcards. Explain those to us.
We have about 32,000 postcards and about 110,000 glass negatives that were given to us by a postcard company that went out of business in Boston.
And nobody knows about it because they're not cataloged. Right. And then these tapes, these are very interesting because some of these tapes, folks, are from the old WHDH TV, the old Channel 5. What's on some of these tapes, Catherine?
This is news footage from about 1967 to 1972, so it includes like the Harvard University riots in 1969.
Oh, it would be fascinating to see some of that stuff, but we can't because...
it's not processed.
And that's...
Right, we need money to process all this material.
Yeah, and these books, tell us about, what are some of these books here?
We have about 10,000 books in our humor collection, including some books by and about Fred Allen.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. Want to read the title?
Etiquette with False Teeth. We also have a World War jokes, which is actually World War I jokes.
Oh, that's unbelievable. You mentioned Fred Allen, and of course he was one of America's great humorists. You and I watch together, along with you at home, as Chet takes us back to a time when radio was king. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
And now we take great pleasure in presenting to you the star of our program, Miss Kate Smith.
Once, a very long time ago, Americans were asked to move freely in time and space and belief. It was called radio.
I wouldn't know where to look for it, dearie.
Oh, I know where it is. It's right here in the hall closet.
Oh, no.
I got to straighten out that closet one of these days.
And for a generation or two, it spoke for all.
This is Bob Trout bringing you the news of Europe.
By the hour, radio informed and entertained and sold everything from soap to cigarettes to cheerful regularity.
Treat your stomach right.
Ring up the boys, man. Tell them to meet me at Pine Creek Forks.
All
See you later, Mom.
Before television, radio was the prime source of pop culture in America, and the kings of radio were the comics. Jack Benny and George Burns, and Red Skelton and Bob Hope, and so many others. But the rector of this comic priesthood for nearly 15 years, when radio was best, was a sharp-tongued Boston Irishman.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Fred Allen.
A humorous observer, unillusioned by illusions, a witty spectator. That was Fred Allen.
In Hollywood, all a producer produces is relatives.
His words came to us in every size, and they were funny and sly and not always what they seemed.
Well, why don't you surprise the Bridge Club tonight and come back from the delicatessen with a grand salami?
His strength was satire, and puns and wordplay and ad-libs that were faster than the speed of light.
Benny is so cheap he has short arms and carries his money low in his pockets. I react to it, of course, because I wrote it.
Biographer Robert Taylor.
The way he used language was very inventive. For example, he'd call a moth a closet butterfly.
In radio, you could never take too long to be brilliant, because next week's program had to be written and rehearsed and played live in front of a studio audience and millions of unseen listeners.
Mr. Moody, what are your feelings about the radio?
I don't hold with it, Bub.
Displeases you?
I don't hold with furniture that talks.
Yeah.
For nearly a score of years in the 30s and 40s, Fred Allen did his programs 39 weeks a season, and all of them were of unfailing quality.
No. Mrs. Nussbaum?
You are expecting maybe sweet rosy O'Grady?
It is these scripts, more than 700 of them, and his personal books, papers, letters, tapes, and recordings that are now housed in the Boston Public Library, available to students and researchers. The Allen Humor Collection is one of the largest in the nation, the gift of his late widow and supporting co-star, Portland Hoffa.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we give you the first group of actors to ever present Ibsen's Wild Duck and eat the script at the first rehearsal.
The mighty Allen Art Players.
Fred Allen said, all comedy and humor is a matter of opinion. I keep trying to do what I think is funny and let the opinions fall where they may.
He hated California. California's a great place to live if you happen to be an orange, was his line.
He was born John Florence Sullivan, the son of a bookbinder at the Boston Public Library. As a teen, he worked as a library stack boy, and there he found a book on juggling. He was the world's worst juggler in vaudeville, and vaudeville's funniest juggler, then America's funniest man on radio. At the top of his popularity, the Fred Allen Show reached 3 out of 4 radio homes in America.
You are Jack Benny? Well, hearing you on the radio with those jokes, I thought you were an old man.
Fred Allen died on St. Patrick's Day, 1956. One report said he was walking his dog when he was stricken. Fred Allen did not have a dog. His response to that story would have been priceless. Now, meet Arnold and Lois Pizer. Arnold worked with Fred Allen, and Arnold and Lois just wrote a play about Fred Allen. It's called From Boston to Portland. It'll open in Boston in September at the Lyric Stage, and I assume you did a great deal of the research right here.
No, yes. That's not correct. We did all the research.
Yeah. The library is fantastic. We spent hours and hours and weeks over a couple of years.
Arnold, tell me about Fred Allen, and you'd walk down the street with him in New York, and he'd encounter these vaudevillians.
Well, you go to pick him up at his apartment, which is on 57th Street, and he'd have his getting ready to put his jacket on, and he would put clean $5 bills in one pocket, singles in another, tens in another, and change in his pants. And we'd walk out, and we'd go walking for dinner, and there would be old vaudevillians. People he had known from the old days who would come by, and he would just put his hand out surreptitiously. As he started down the street, he'd get something in his hand, and he would say, "How are you? It's good to see you." He would encourage people, and he once told me that he learned all of this from a former weightlifter and a circus strongman named Sam Cohen, who worked in amateur shows in Boston, and who reputedly is the guy who started giving people the hook.
Remarkable man. And I got to tell you, I didn't know that he was from Boston. I remember listening to Fred Allen on the radio. We look forward to seeing your play, which opens this fall.
We're thrilled about it.
Wonderful. Thank you both for coming by. I'm glad you did. Now let's go to Frank Abrouche.
I don't know whether you realize it or not, but more people use the Boston Public Library than one place. This is the most popular place in Boston except for one. Do you know what that place is? Fenway Park. Believe it or not, 2 million visitors a year go through these hallowed halls. This is a wonderful resource, and we are delighted that you can be part of this. We want you to stand up and become part of the restoration that is going on to preserve this wonderful building and the resource that it is to so many people. So please give us a call at 375-6900. We need your support, New England. We need it now. Here's one of the gentlemen who's used the resource of the Boston Public Library for a long time. This is the author of Back Bay and Cape Cod. He grew up in West Roxbury. As a matter of fact, you use that branches a lot, where you give a lot of slide lectures now, and I guess you use the Boston Public Library mainly to get a lot of photo support, right?
Well, not only that, but that primarily these days when I'm looking for slides and things like that, this library has an enormous number of resources. As an historical novelist, I spend a lot of time in libraries all over the country. But in this library, you can come and get photographs of old Boston, new Boston, beautifully preserved things. The only problem with them is that they're way off in this room, way up in the corner, and it's a collection that needs more attention. I've just done an American Experience on PBS a few months ago, and one of the portraits of George Washington that we used for this program about Washington was by Emanuel Leutze, and the portrait is hanging up here in a research room, and the paint is peeling off the walls all around it, and you say to yourself, this is a magnificent portrait, and here it is in a setting that really deserves upgrading.
Well, William Martin, thank you very much. William Martin is the author of Cape Cod. That's his newest novel, and we have 10 autographed copies of this, with Bill autographing it right here for the first 10 people who call and donate $100 or more. So please give us a call, and we'll let you know later in the week if you're one of the 10 lucky people to get this autographed copy of William Martin's Cape Cod. Now, Bill used the branch library at West Roxbury, but there are 25 branch libraries that the Boston Public Library supports, and one of them is at Codman Square, where my colleague Karen Holmes is right now. Karen?
I hope it doesn't come out too big. Okay.
Okay, Frank, we are here with Bonaparte. He's one of Boston's hottest musicians. He's not the hottest, he's got a great
and I'll
trick
say
for
really,
us.
really loud. Habita, habita, habita.
Habita. Oh,
you guys.
Where did it go?
This is a
Where
giant
did it go,
magic
Bonaparte?
wand.
How did you do that?
The powers. We've got all kinds of theories and everything.
How did you do that?
Well, we need a giant magic wand for the next magic trick.
Are you going to
Will you help me with it? You will?
Yes, yes.
You have two jobs. First, you have
Now,
to hold that magic wand.
I have some friends that I want to disappear. Can you help me with that?
It all
help
sort of
me?
depends on the spell.
Okay.
Okay.
And I have a magic nose, too, that I'm
Well,
supposed
you have
to
to
wear?
put this on because otherwise the tricks don't work.
Okay.
Okay.
Ooh,
now,
what a job.
Is that good? There we go. Does she look good with that?
What a
Just go,
job I
yay!
Yay!
Now, I need a balloon. And let's see, I'm going to attach this to the tray here. Now, guys, I need
Come
you to
up
think
here. Let's see.
positive thoughts, okay?
Uh-huh.
Think positive thoughts.
What should I do?
Your job is to wave the wand.
Okay.
And when we say habita, 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 that's when the magic's going to happen.
Are you guys going to help me say this? Yeah. Okay.
Are you guys ready?
Ready?
Okay. Wiggle your hips like that. And just say, Frimmin, Framlin, and Fang Dang.
Frimmin, Framlin, Fang Dang.
Willy Wonka and the Wang Gang.
Willy Wonka and the Wang Gang.
6, 5, 4, 3.
6, 5, 4, 3.
The Boston Public Library is the place to be.
The Boston Public Library is the place to be.
And I'll say really, really loud. That's when you wave the wand. Say, habita, habita, habita.
Habita, habita, habita.
Whoa! You guys, this is incredible.
The bird's beautiful.
How did
What's
you
your name?
do that?
Oh,
this
that's
is
great.
snow.
That's great. While Bonaparte does some more tricks, we're going to take a look at this library
Give
moment.
yourselves a round of applause, you guys. That's my good friend Snow from Limbo Land. Oh, she did the poo-poo thing right on the rug there. Snow, I didn't even know you were coming from Limbo Land and everything. You are fantastical. The powers you have with waving the wands and everything.
Hi, my name is David Poole of New England Patriots. My favorite book when I was coming up was Cat in the Hat. My favorite book now is Goodnight Moon. And the reason for being Goodnight Moon is because I have 2 children. I read to them every night. And I feel that reading to them is very important because right now in today's society, in order to get somewhere, you have to be able to read. And whatever you want to do, go to the library and read up on it because that can be your vehicle and a stepping stone for whatever you want to do in life.
I want to thank Nancy Barber of Dorchester and Evangeline Miller of Watertown. Thank you for your pledge. I think you realize how important it is to help here. The Boston Public Library needs your support. They're in the middle of a $16 million restoration campaign. So please give us a call right now. With me now, another author who I guess realizes how important the Boston Public Library is. This is Lois Lowry, who's written a lot of children's books, best known perhaps for the Anastasia series. Tell us, how did you come up with the idea of that 12-year-old that kids adore, Lois?
Well, I've got 4 of my own, but actually she was based on Amy Carter as a child, although Amy
Really?
Carter doesn't know that.
Would you think she'd be happy about it?
Well, who knows? She's kind of outrageous herself, as is the book character.
Yeah, and you do use the Boston Public Library. Why is this such an important resource, do you think?
All libraries are important to all writers. I sneak the library into my books, too. My book characters use the Boston Public Library since many of my books are set in Boston.
Lois, thank you very much for adding your support here. And we also want to remember that we're going to give away 4 of Lois' books, including her latest. So we hope that you will give us a call, and who knows, we'll let you know later in the week if you're one of the winners of Lois's latest books. Thank you very much. And now Susan has some very interesting things to show you in Bates Hall. Susan?
Frank, among the treasures here at the Boston Public Library, a lot of people don't know this, but the original sketches from Robert McCloskey. Of course, you know his famous book, the children's classic, Make Way for Ducklings. Well, that is, of course, one of the most beloved children's books of all. And the original sketches are right here, and we're going to show you some of these sketches here that are here at the library. See, what he did is he did the sketches, and then, of course, he practiced, and then they became, eventually, the pictures in the book. Look at this. See, now, this is, I hope you can really see that this is, these are just sketches, and they're all done in pencil. But what happened is that they started looking like this, and then they ended up looking like this. And we are really lucky because we have 5 of these books here tonight, which have all been signed by the author Robert McCloskey. And the first 5 people who donate $250 will get this book, which is signed. So get on the phone and make your call right now, and we'll let you know later in the week if you were one of the lucky 5. So get on the phone. This is going to be a collector's item someday. You don't want to miss this. Right, Nat?
Right you are, Susan Warnick. Say hello to Superintendent of Boston Schools, Lois Harrison Jones, who's with us today and who has joined with Diddy Cullinade and formed a partnership with this wonderful institution, this Boston Public Library, and its 25 branches across this city, and the school children of the city of Boston. Tell us a little bit about that and the various aspects of that program.
Oh, there are so many wonderful things. First of all, it's the epitome of collaboration. Diddy and I decided last fall that certainly there was no point in young people knowing how to read if there were no opportunities for them to read. And we wanted something for everybody, from the little ones to the big ones. And of course, the little ones are into the business of making book jackets.
Wait a minute, let's bring in Diddy. Sorry to interrupt you here. How are you? That's quite all right. Nice to see you. The superintendent was just explaining some of the aspects of the partnership.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Well, as I said, there was something for the little ones, and the middle ones are in the process of now really making that transition between reading and illustrations and whatnot. In other words, they know that most books are illustrated, so they can make their point in pictorial form, and we're hoping that very soon all over the city you're going to hear what the middle school youngsters in Boston think about reading, because you'll see their illustrations plus their signage.
There's some of them right here. You will see these on posters that are going to be displayed, I should say, all across the city on the Ackerley billboards, and our thanks to the Ackerleys and the company for putting this together. And I want you to say hello to Diddy Cullinade, who with her husband is responsible for pulling this evening off this tonight.
A little help from our friends, I must say, but it's a wonderful evening for the library. And the library represents the best of what Boston was and is, and I think will help to lead Boston into what it can be. And people like the superintendent, who joined so enthusiastically into this program, and her wonderful staff and the library staff. So many people to thank for this. Ackerley certainly for coming with the billboards. And
What was your thinking, Mrs. Colonnade, as you met with the superintendent about this partnership with the school children?
Well, I must say it was born with Ackerley, who donated 200 billboards for our use. Rather than have the ad agencies create something, it occurred to me that the school children might be just the perfect people to do it. And I met with the superintendent. She immediately agreed. We both started to work on it, and it developed into a 3-tiered program, really, of the billboards and the creative writing and then the library card registration, which has doubled, and you may have already told them that.
No, we haven't, and that's what I'm really excited about. Not only that, but when you think in terms of over 16,000 new memberships within less than a school year, I think that's wonderful, because as far as I'm concerned, there's no point in knowing how to read if you don't read.
Very good point. Thank you very much for being here. That's quite an accomplishment. 16,000 new children have got cards to the Boston Public Library right now. They've just opened a great big door for themselves. Now, many of us got hooked on reading because of the storybook characters that we loved as children. Boston has some wonderful children's authors like Cambridge resident Margaret Ray, who created Curious George.
I always wondered what made him so unbelievable. It's unbelievable to me when I get someplace and there's never anybody who doesn't know George.
Curious George, a literary hero to children, is just as popular now as he was over 50 years ago, when Margaret Ray and her husband, H.A. Ray, introduced him to the world.
He is not in every country, but he is, I never counted them, but it must be 12 or 15 countries, you know. England has a different name because George couldn't be called George because the king was George when it came out.
The Rays, both born in Germany, moved to Cambridge over 30 years ago. H.A. died there in 1977. Margaret says they never planned on careers as authors, but in the late 1930s, they needed money. Since then, nearly 7 million copies of their Curious George books have been sold in the United States alone. Margaret struggles to explain his enormous appeal.
I guess he does things children would like to do, like painting a room, for instance, you know, they can't quite do. You know, he goes a little farther than children can go.
Did they create George to be a role model for children?
Not at all. And sometimes people always want to make him a goody-goody, and couldn't he do for this cause and for that cause? I said, not George, it doesn't go with him, you know, he would refuse.
Curious George was born of the Rays' imagination. But the characters in the books of another local author, Irene Smalls Hector, are family and friends.
Jonathan and his mommy was written right up the street. That's about me and my son, Jonathan. I've never lived in the suburbs of the country. And I wouldn't know how to write stories about the suburbs of the country or animal stories because I've never been around animals and I've never had pets. So I write really from my experience. So all of my stories are going to be urban stories. They're going to be African-American stories.
Irene says she feels that an important story is not being told in children's books, a story about the richness and the fabric of the African-American experience. She uses Negro dialect wherever she can in her stories.
In every book, the dedication is, I love you, black child. It's meant to affirm, you know, why I'm writing the books. But the books are really written for all kinds of children, because if I can show in my stories that black children are really not different. They're really not different from any other child. That, you know, if this little boy, you know, snubs his toe and it hurts, if a black child snubbed his toe, it would hurt too. And it wouldn't hurt any differently.
Norman Bridwell, author of Clifford the Big Red Dog stories, says when he was young, he always imagined he might have a dog the size of a horse.
I always figured if I had a great big dog, a nice gentle dog that I could ride on, I'd have an ideal pet.
So he created a story about his imaginary dog, and he named him Clifford.
It was simply explaining what I thought was, at the time, was everything you could possibly say about a big red dog. The good things and the bad things. He couldn't be taken to the zoo because he tried to chase the lions and tigers. If he went by a shoe store that had a sign with a shoe on it, he'd stop to chew on the shoe. The good things were you could go camping under his ear by propping up one ear with a stick. You had a tent. And there were some other things, too, that I thought might appeal to children. But to tell you the truth, I wasn't really thinking about children when I wrote the book. I knew I was doing a children's book, but I simply took something that amused me. I wrote something that made me laugh. I thought maybe it'll make children laugh too.
Oh, Clifford looks so cute. This is so wonderful. Author Norman Bridwell is here, illustrator Norman Bridwell. Now, you're going to do something to make the kids laugh by...
I'd like to make them laugh.
Okay, let's see.
I enjoy doing that.
Let's see what you can do.
Do you have anything that you'd like to see Clifford do that you think might be a funny thing?
Yeah.
What would you like to see?
Jump over a house.
A what?
A house.
Jump over a house?
Let's see that.
I didn't expect that, but...
You came all the way here from Martha's Vineyard to be with us this evening on this rainy night. What is it that makes Clifford so lovable? Why do you think kids enjoy Clifford so much?
I don't really know. You thought I'd say I had an answer for that. But there's something about him, his size, the fact that he's not perfect.
He's so big and lovable.
Well, that could have something to do with it.
Mm-hmm. He reminds me of a dog that we used to have when we were little.
Well, maybe that's the answer. Maybe he's everybody's favorite dog that they had when they were a child.
How did you arrive at that red color for him?
I happened to have a jar of red paint on the drawing table the first time I did a picture of Clifford. I hope he's not
simple
gonna...
as that, huh?
That was about it. It was just luck.
Now,
what else can we do?
We have some books here, too. And we'd like to thank Mr. Bridwell for bringing these books. These are gifts to the Codman Square branch of the Boston Public Library. Oversized book, Clifford's Puppy Days. And for the first two people that call in, we have some signed and autographed books from Norman Bridwell, Clifford's Birthday Party. They're just gorgeous. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Bridwell.
Well, you're very welcome.
Now let's hear
Thank
what
you.
News Center 5's Chuck Kramer has to say about the relationship between reading and television.
I don't know if it's exactly legal to say this during a telethon, but I will anyhow. Reading is in jeopardy from television. Books are losing the battle for our fractured attention spans, losing out to MTV and Jay Leno, and yes, even Big Bird. Library cards, which used to be our main passkey, didn't they, to information and enlightenment and just plain fun, too often neglected now in favor of, what else, the TV remote. I wish this weren't so. I mean, as a perpetrator of television myself, I wish I could stand here and tell you that television somehow promotes reading, but I can't. It's an old saw, but it's still true. A TV set displaces a book. Television has this insidious way of arousing and quenching mere appetite for newness and speed and sensation and material objects, all of which leave very little time in our lives or brains for anything resembling literacy. I hope this doesn't sound smug. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like television. I watch 4, 5, 6 hours a week of TV, but remain a little terrified. Shouldn't we all be that so many people, especially children, watch so much more? 5, 6, 7 hours a day, not unusual. Good grief. What a lot of life we miss when we lead a life that way. I mean, television is so incomplete. Television has no equivalent of, say, John Updike or John McPhee or Toni Morrison or Charlotte's Web. Trafficking as it does mostly in the here and now and in pictures, television has no real access, does it, to the unphotographed past, to most of history. Television pictures usually do violence to anything contemplative and never quite deliver us, do they, into that precious interior realm of the human mind where eureka experiences can happen. Spaces where maybe only a talented author can lead and a committed reader can follow. We require, therefore, books, available books, free books, and therefore libraries, and therefore, from time to time, yes, even library telethons. Not an oxymoron after all, I guess, not if it can raise a consciousness or two, or better yet, this is where you come in, a buck or two, to subsidize the rapture that only an open book can cause.
Hi, I'm Diane White from the Boston Globe. I remember the first time that I was ever allowed into a library alone by myself to do whatever I wanted to do. I was in the 3rd grade at the Harry A. Baldwin School in Brighton, and the bookmobile came by. Up until that time, my mother had always taken me to the library, and she had monitored my book borrowing. I remember walking into that bookmobile that day and looking around and seeing all those books, and I piled up my arms with 20 or 30 books, and I went up to the desk to check them out, and the librarian had to explain to me that I was only allowed to take 3, and I was so embarrassed. So I picked the 3 books I liked best, and I came back the next week and picked some of the books that I hadn't been able to take the week before, and I've been coming back ever since.
Hi, I'm Spencer Christian from Good Morning America, inviting you to visit your local library. When I was a kid growing up in a small rural town of Virginia, I was too poor to travel and see the world, but I discovered what an exciting world was out there through books. I always enjoyed reading and enjoyed visiting my library and checking out books that would help me find out what was out there in that great, exciting world and help me decide what I wanted to do when I grew up. And now here I am being a communicator on television because my interest in this business was stimulated by books.
A lot of people's interests were stimulated by books. Do you think that authors are born? No, sir, they're made. They probably started right off in a Boston Public Library or in another library in another city. Say hello to Robin Cook, Boston doctor turned author. You probably know his book, Coma, which was such a big hit. He's written many more, over 100 million books sold around the world, Robin.
Isn't that... I didn't even take English or writing in college either.
So you needed your library.
Absolutely, and I spent a lot of time in the library as a young person.
How much does a library really help an author?
Well, particularly in most of my books, I have to take time out. My main character has to go to a library to look something up, to find out some bit or piece of information in order to make the story go forward. And that's what happens to me, so that's why my characters do it.
So in real life, that's also true.
Absolutely. I think this is one of the best places for young people to spend a little bit of time.
And if you could speak to budding authors, what would you tell them?
I'd say come in and read as much as you can.
The more you read, the better a writer you will be. And Robin is offering 5 copies of his latest book, Terminal, to the first 5 people who call in with a donation of $100 or more. What a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you.
Okay, best to you, and now over to Frank Avrush.
We're back once again at the telethon with all these volunteers from Blue Cross and also from the Boston. Are you all there? Ready to go? Okay, they're waiting for your call at 375-6900. And we want to thank Alyssa Jarvis of Framingham for your pledge, and Angel Fernandez and Karen Diamond of Boston for pledging a wonderful pledge for this Boston Public Library Telethon. Priscilla Catlin of South Hamilton, thank you for your generous support. And Susan Howard of Dover and Diane Potter of Dedham. Thank you all for giving your support. This is a wonderful, the first of its kind ever, a telethon for the Boston Public Library to help preserve one of the city's greatest treasures. I know many of you out there have used the public library at times. 2 million visitors come here every week, so we hope that you'll pick up that phone right now and help us. Please, we need your support. They're going through a tremendous renovation campaign to get this library to be one of the finest, as it always has been, in the entire country. Now Susan has some special items to show you in Bates Hall. Susan?
Absolutely, Frank. More of the treasures that the BPL has to offer that most people just don't even know about. Let's go back in history a little bit. Remember the Sacco Vanzetti case? Well, let me refresh your memory. That, of course, was the famous murder case from the 1920s. Sacco and Vanzetti were Italian immigrants accused of murder in a Braintree robbery. Their trial and subsequent execution outraged people all over the country for being politically motivated and anti-immigrant. Their defense committee was based right here in Boston, and they donated all their documents and records right here to the BPL. And the curator of manuscripts joins us now, Giuseppe Bisaccia. Thank you so much for being with us.
Very welcome.
Tell us, these are known as death masks?
Yes, they are. They were made after the execution on about 25th of August 1927, and eventually there was a funeral on the following Sunday, the 28th, and they were taken over to the crematory at Forest Hills.
Wow, and these were done there. That's amazing.
Of course, there at the crematory on August 28th, 1927, they cremated, and this is only a portion of the ashes.
Where's the rest of the ashes?
The rest are in Villa Falletto, the birthplace of Bartolomeo Vanzetti, and Torre Maggiore, the birthplace of Nicola Sacco.
Oh, it's fascinating. People don't know about this. It's unbelievable. Thank you for joining us to help us tell everybody. Chet?
All right, Susan, thank you very much. Senate President William Bulger is president of the trustees of the Boston Public Library, and to our left is John Cullinane, head of the Boston Public Library Foundation. Let me ask you first, Senator Bulger, do you know Babe Ruth's rookie year batting average?
I don't know Babe Ruth.
I didn't know that either, but we'll look it up before we leave here, I can tell you.
That can be done.
I know that this building is one that is very close to your heart.
Oh, it is. It's a historic building. It's one of the great buildings, public buildings of the world. It houses, among many other things in its rare books collection, 3,500 volumes of the Library of John Adams, the second president of the United States.
We were looking at some of that today, actually. We were fortunate enough to get a tour through the inner sanctums of the Boston Public Library. You know, there are also 5,000 events a year that are scheduled not only here at the main library, but at the branches as well. John Cullinane, that's 13 a day. People don't realize that.
It's an absolutely remarkable place, and I've just learned a lot of these things in the past year when I became president of the Boston Public Library Foundation, and I was asked to do that by the Senate President and William Taylor, and when two people as respected and admired as these two individuals are, you just do what they tell you to do.
Now, I know you've raised over $4.5 million of your, $16 million goal in just this year.
That's correct. Within a year, we're almost close to $5 million, which is a remarkable accomplishment in such a short period of time. But the fact of the matter is that good people in town have gotten on board as a result of the support I've gotten from the Senate President and from Bill Taylor. It's made the process much easier than you might think.
I know the Senate President has been a big fan of the public libraries, always make sure that it's well funded.
Well, we try very hard to do that.
Keep up the good work.
Thank heavens for Diddy Cullinane and John Cullinane. They've been splendid.
Indeed. And John Cullinane is offering signed copies of his book, The Entrepreneur's Survival Guide. So if you want to call and make a donation of $100, you'll have a copy. The number is 375-6900. The library offers thousands of free programs every year, from films to drug counseling. Any of them, and many of them, I should say, happen in the branches in the Boston neighborhoods.
I like the library because of the books, the people that are there.
We try to offer programming for a lot of varied people.
I like the films I see here.
The best kept secret of this library is the many resources available to the public free.
That's right, absolutely free. From movies and storytellers to seminars and live performances.
I mean, can you imagine this colored girl just standing there on 125th Street?
The Boston Public Library's 25 neighborhood branches and its business branch provide more than 5,000 events a year, all to serve the cultural and educational needs of Boston's diverse neighborhoods.
It's story time, it's story time, it's
For preschoolers and their parents, Mondays begin with toddler time at the Fields Corner branch. Moms, dads, and children ages 2.5 to 4 sing songs, dance, and listen to stories.
The North End Branch Library is really the center of the community for the North End, I believe. Besides being a normal library, we also have, it's a meeting place where people come to enjoy the beautiful building and the quiet.
Its lecture series is popular with North End seniors, where they learn anything from the proper care of animals to the abolitionist movement of Boston.
Hello, we are the Fifield Culture Creative Group. We are about to present the Talking Heads.
When the school bell rings, Dorchester children head to the Codman Square branch. These youngsters are rehearsing for an upcoming performance of the Puppet Theater Workshop. Others may opt for the weekly children's film series at Charlestown Branch Library. Here, young movie buffs can lean back and enjoy the afternoon's flicks. And in the heart of downtown Boston is the BPL's business branch, for those with a bent for business.
Well, I think of the Kirstein Business Branch as being a place where people come to find information to help them make money, basically, whether they're small business people starting a new small business, or investors looking for good places to invest, or a corporate library looking for information that they can't get in their own smaller libraries.
Hi, how you doing?
Okay, how are you?
Good, thanks.
I'm rather handicapped. I can't walk too much, and weather like we've been having has kept me home.
And if you can't make it into one of the branches, the mobile library service can come to you.
They are the funniest things, these crazy cats.
Yeah.
Well, it provides me with so many books that I could never read because I couldn't get them home anyway. So by bringing them here, I read everything.
I'm Dr. Alvin Poussin, and libraries have really been very important in my life. I grew up in a family of 8 children. I lived in a very small apartment, so to get my work done after school, I had to go to the library to do my homework, and that continued through junior high school, and even through college. That library being available to me until closing time really played an important part in my success.
He was littering. Littering is throwing bottles and cans and paper in the street.
Right now we're at the Codman Square branch of the Boston Public Library, and the Fifield Creative Cultural Group is performing for us. Let's listen as the Talking Heads perform a skit about the environment.
What's up, Ickle? Did you see this fine boy littering? I did not see that fine boy that y'all saw. I saw this ugly boy. He was taking orange peels and throwing them on the ground. What should we do?
Let's teach him a lesson.
Let's give him a good lesson.
Yeah.
Let's tell him if he picks up all the garbage near his house, that he will get a special surprise.
And a tip.
So the next day, Ikami saw the boy again.
All right, that is a wonderful skit, and we're with Greg Eugene of Perspective Productions. You are the director of the Fifield Creative Group. Why is it important to have a program like this at the public library?
It's important to give back to kids, give them an opportunity to perform. I mean, you know, there's been money taken out of the arts, and this is an opportunity to give these kids a chance to develop some self-esteem and to get involved in the work and to think and to do some improvisational kind of work, oral and vocal skills.
Now, I understand that they wrote this skit themselves?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. The environment. And these girls are really excited about doing this kind of work because it gives them a chance to put to work some of the things that they've been working on.
And this is not a solo effort.
Oh, no. Oh, no. There's Mary Claire Knight at the Dorchester Library and Rodney Foxworth. These guys have made it possible for me to start establishing a theater that goes into the public schools and do this kind of work.
All right, Greg Eugene, thanks for being with us. Frank, let's go back to you.
Thank you. And Karen, of course, at the Codman Square, you know there are 25 branch libraries. We're at the Central Library, but the branch libraries are so important. That's one of the best investments I think you can make. We want to make this a grassroots effort tonight. And whether it's $5, $10, whatever you feel you can afford, we hope that you'll give us a call at 375-6900. We need your support. Here is one of the ladies, a real driving force in the branch library system. And she is the founder of the West Roxbury Friends Group. Isn't that right? Alice Hennessy is your name. And Alice, tell us, why are the branch libraries such an important part of the whole system?
The branch libraries are more than the branches. They're the roots of the entire system. The McKim building is the flower, but we're the roots and we keep things going. I founded the Friends in 1974, and shortly after, in 1981, when 2.5 came in, we had the threat of branches closing. That's when I met then City Councilor Raymond Flynn on a picket line in front of this very building when we were trying to keep the branches open. He sends his regrets. He's sorry he can't be with you tonight, but he sends his best wishes.
And we're all glad that he's well anyway.
Yes. Since that time, we have friends groups in 22 of the 25 branches, and we're going to be a big part of this foundation.
Alice,
Thank you.
You're an inspiration. Keep up the good work. Don't give up. Alice Hennessy from the West Roxbury branch. Now back to you, Nat and Chet.
Okay, thanks very much, Frank. Say hello to John Kenneth Galbraith, economist, author, former ambassador to India, advisor to presidents. He's just come back from a reception for the King and Queen of Spain right here in Boston.
Well, I have a long association with Spain, and so I have to excuse myself from paying undue attention to royalty.
You also have a long association with libraries, and I know you've just come back from a fundraiser in Ontario.
I was the library into which I was born, and it's left me with an affection for libraries ever since, because it was what opened the whole world to my eyes.
And can you, for people listening who maybe don't come to libraries, especially the young people I'm thinking of, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean by that there is nothing that so releases you from the limitations of life as going to a library and having access to the books that open up the whole, as I say, open up the whole world. There's nothing like it.
Couldn't agree more.
You've been teaching at Harvard for 60 years. Are students reading more now or less?
Oh, the students at Harvard are very much better than when I first went there.
Here's
no comparison.
All right, by the way, here's John Kenneth Galbraith's The Culture of Contentment, signed by the author. And for the first 5 people who call with a donation of $100 or more, you will be the recipient of 1 copy of this book. And the number is 375-6900.
Don't forget, part of the title of
You can send more than $100 if you want.
Indeed, you can send 1,000.
We want all people to have that righteous feeling of poverty.
Professor Galbraith, thank you very much. We're grateful to you for spending some time here with us tonight. We'll be back after this library moment.
Hi, I'm Rick Fox of the Boston Celtics. The library has always been important to me simply because of knowledge. My belief is that knowledge is power. What better place to find power than in the library? A lot of people do not realize that not only are there books in the library, but there's videos, there's computers. There's a lot of things that can bring that knowledge to you.
Hi, I'm Beverly Beckham. I'm a columnist with the Boston Herald. When I was in the 7th grade, I lived in Randolph, but I went to school in Dorchester at St. Mark's, and every single week we had to read a book and do a book report. Because of this, I read. And every single day, we had an hour and a half for lunch. And all the kids in the parish went home to lunch because they lived close by, and I lived in Randolph and couldn't go home. So I went to Codman Square specifically to the Codman Square Library because I had an hour and a half with nothing to do. It was because of this that I fell in love with books, because of the atmosphere there, because of the smells and the millions of books. In Randolph, you couldn't go into any part of the library except the children's library. At Codman Square Library, I had the whole library.
375-6900 is the number. I can't tell you what a thrill it is to know that so many of you care about keeping this library alive. So keep those phones ringing, 375-6900. And we want to thank Robert LaFerrara of Dedham and Shelley Summer of Situate. And listen to this. We got a big donation from Frank Sullivan of York, Maine, who realize how important libraries are. We thank all of you. If you haven't called yet, pick up that phone and give us a call right now. Nat, Chet?
All right, Frank, thank you very much. Art Dunphy is the Public Relations Director here at the Boston Public Library and just was so nice to us a couple of hours ago and gave us an opportunity to visit some of the inner sanctums of this magnificent building.
Well, it's always a pleasure to show people the wonderful treasures that are here at the Boston Public Library, and particularly nice to take you and Natalie around and give you the tour.
You know what's extraordinary? We can't show you all of it. We've tried to with some of these videotapes we put together, but what I call the Sistine Chapel Room, which is really the John Singer Sawyer.
John Singer Sargent.
Sargent, rather, gallery. For 20 years, this Bostonian painted what looks like the Sistine Chapel in Rome, and now needs tremendous work to restore it to where it was, and that takes money.
It takes a lot of money, and that'll be a part of Phase 3, and hopefully as part of this phonathon, it will raise some money towards that restoration project.
We sometimes forget, that part of the title of this library is the Boston Free Public Library, and as we all know, there's nothing free in life, so while it's free to those who would come and avail themselves of the incredible services of a library, it takes money to run it, so give a call and give what you can to keep this going.
Art, thank you. Let's go to Karen Holmes now, back at Codman Square. Karen?
Hey, Frank, we've been having such a great time here tonight. We want you to know that the Codman Square branch serves one of the most diverse populations in the city. They've got wonderful things going on here. They've got a chess club, SAT studying, yoga classes, and Linda Ivers is the head branch librarian. What are you going to say?
Come down and see us at Codman Square Branch.
All right. Susan, back to you.
Okay, very well said. Thank you both. With me is Dr. Laura Monti, the keeper of rare books. That title itself seems very interesting and intriguing, and you have a rare book. Tell us about that.
This is a book of hours.
Book of hours?
Yes.
What does that mean exactly?
It means that it's a book of psalms and prayers to be prayed and sung during the 7 hours of the day, divided in canonical hours.
And what makes this so special besides
the illumination? As you see, it's illuminated with gold and colors, and that is what makes it special.
It's very beautiful, yes, no question about that.
14th century.
14th century. Sometimes I feel like that's when I was born. Let's take a look. No. Let's take a look at this. The Declaration of Independence with original
signature.
When we say the John Hancock, this is the John Hancock.
And then we have John Adams and Samuel Adams. You can see, and Benjamin Franklin. So these are the original signatures put over the facsimile signature.
Well, it's just a fascinating bit of history here in the museum that most people just don't know about.
No, exactly. This is hanging in our reading room for everybody to see.
Well, let's hope that they come down and see it soon.
Yes,
Thank you, Dr. Monti. I appreciate that information. Take a little walk over here to a gentleman who has given so much of his own time and money. Bob Severy is a state worker, but you've donated just thousands of dollars to the restoration of paintings.
But this is the Winslow Homer, and when my friend Teresa Cederholm brought out of the frame, we uncovered that about 20% of it was wrapped around the frame. And we took it over to Mr. Bradley in Arlington, and he helped to restore the art treasures of Florence after the flood of years and years ago. And so we can see it was 20% larger. And then it dawned on me, this was Colonel W.F. Bartlett. And then it dawned on me, he was later general in the Civil War, William Francis Bartlett, for whom Bartlett Hall, the State House, was named.
It's all fascinating, the history in this building, and you're so good to donate so much to it.
16,000 photographs of Boston in the library that put somebody to work cataloging.
That's right. We got to get some money to pay that person to put him to work. Thanks so much for being with us, Bob. Chet, Nat?
All right, Susan.
16,000 photographs, yowzer.
And also all the videotape from the old Channel 5 that someone has to catalog. 375-6900 is the number here.
Say hello to Paul Birmingham, was born and raised here in the greater Boston area and a great friend of the Boston Public Library.
Evening. How are you?
Good evening. Good, thank you.
I'm happy to present a check for $100,000 to the Boston Public Library from the Birmingham Foundation. And the library is going to use these funds to strengthen the ties between the Catholic schools in Boston and the Boston Public Library. Some of the programs that Diddy Cullinane mentioned earlier, such as the outdoor advertising, the writing program, and the enrollment drive will be done for the Catholic schools next year in the school year. So it's a way of catching up, and we might use some of the funds to assist the Spanish-speaking students in the Catholic schools to make sure they understand all the benefits that are available at the Boston Public Library.
This is obviously very important to you.
It is, yes it is, sure.
Paul, thank you very much, and thanks to the Birmingham Foundation for that very, very generous check for $100,000. I tell you, by the way, we have one more Make Way for Ducklings book left for a pledge of $250. Please call 375-6900. We'll find out how much money we've been able to raise tonight when we come back after this library moment from Senator Edward Kennedy.
Reading has always been enormously important to my family. Some of my happiest memories are of sitting in bed with my mother and father when they read books like Peter Rabbit or Billy Whiskers to me. My brothers and sisters loved to read and share their books with me too. As I learned to read myself, one of my favorite books was the adventure story of a magnificent dog named Lad. Reading opens the door to the world of imagination, and walking into a library is crossing the threshold of a priceless opportunity to learn about the world.
Susan, would you believe the treasures that are here at the Boston Public Library?
It's truly amazing, and I hope that we've given you an opportunity at home to see just even a small part of why we're here and why we'd like you to become involved.
We want to let you know that even after we're off the air, you can still give us a call. Our phone operators will stand by. They're volunteering their time to take your pledge here to the Boston Public Library
Yeah,
Telethon.
the phones are going to stay open for another half hour even after we're off the air, so that'll be until about 9:30.
Yeah, 375-6900. If you haven't called, if you realize how important this great institution is, please lend your support and give us a call right now.
That's right, or call us at home, you know, and we'd take that
That's
too,
okay.
right?
One thing I've learned tonight, never wear a blue suit to a building that is being renovated. I'm getting white stuff and chalk dust and everything all over me. But it has been a wonderful experience. The volunteers from the Boston Public Library and also from Blue Shield, they have been terrific answering your phones. We've been giving away books, autographed copies. And if you haven't made your pledge yet, this is such an important treasure in our city. It's what makes Boston such a very special place. So
and
please.
as always, the Boston audience, we really want to thank you.
You really come through. 375-6900. Thank you, New England. And now back to Nat and Chet.
All right, Frank, thank you very much. Arthur Curley has been director of the Boston Public Library since 1985, and we're going to chat with him a little bit. But first, Arthur, I want to ask you if you know Babe Ruth's rookie year batting average.
I'm going to guess 323.
Darn close. 315, 92 at bats, 1915. I remember.
She looked it up.
Always knew it, always knew it. You know, we've been spending the last 90 minutes, Arthur, talking about the importance of this library, not only for the library's sake, but certainly for the residents of this community. Give us a little sense of why this fundraiser is so important and where this money is headed.
You've seen the people who've spoken on camera tonight and what the library has meant. People all over town have seen the fence around the building, and they know that we're restoring it. But what we're really restoring is the spirit of the place, what's inside it, what makes people want to come here. You remember as children, as I do, what it meant to walk into an inspiring institution that promised that you would learn and grow, and that's what we're trying to make this place. And what we're doing tonight is what people did 150 years ago in Boston. We're recreating something very, very special. On the top of the building, it says, "Built by the people of Boston," and now we're asking the people to help rebuild it and to make it for the 21st century what it has been for the last century and a half.
I got a feeling they are responding. We heard those telephones ringing down the hallway here. 375-6900 is the number to call.
Arthur, I want you to pick up that book, if you will, and turn to a page we have marked off, and let's see how much money that we have been able to get on our tote board here.
One of my very favorite books. I'm happy to tell you.
Okay. Let me help you here.
And it's a book of numbers. Very nice.
130,602. I can read upside down.
That is wonderful.
It's wonderful.
And if your contribution is noted in this figure, we thank you too very much.
Well, I want to thank you for what you've done tonight. This is a first for the library, and I want to thank all the many volunteers and the people who've called in. It's been an extraordinary event. Thank you.
Arthur, that's right. And if you haven't had an opportunity to call yet, you can do so. The folks will be manning the telephones as long as they keep ringing. Thank you very, very much to everyone who participated, our technical crew, our production staff. We're going to leave you with a little librarian music.
Also, I just wanted this one note, too. In addition to the money that we've raised, we hope we've introduced this library to some of you who haven't been using it to its fullest. It's a great treasure, and it's yours for free.
Good night, and thank you.
Oh, what can I do, my dear, to catch your ear? I love you madly, madly, Madam Librarian. Marion, heaven help us if the library caught on fire and the volunteer hose brigade men had to whisper the news to Marion. Madam Librarian. Oh, what can I say, my dear, to make it clear? I need you badly, badly, Madam Librarian. Marion, if I stumbled and I busted my whatchamacallit, I could lie on your floor unnoticed till my body had turned to carrion. Madam Librarian. Now in the moonlight, a man could sing it in the moonlight.